Tonight, WWE presents another episode of Monday Night Raw from inside the WWE ThunderDome in Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, Florida. Now, as always, there isn't a ton that's been announced so far for tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw. The only things we've had announced so far for the show is the match you can see right there, which of course is Alexa Bliss returning to action inside of a WWE ring. She's facing off against one half of the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, Asuka, and also the Raw Women's Champion as well. Yes, you might have forgotten, it's not really been mentioned, or we haven't seen any title defenses in recent weeks or months, but Asuka is still the Raw Women's Champion. So Alexa Bliss is returning to the ring tonight. To be honest, what's interesting when it comes to the whole Women's Division on Raw, the Raw Women's Championship, is that I mentioned there that Alexa Bliss is returning to the ring. That's the story here. The story isn't about Asuka. The story isn't about Asuka being one half of the Women's Tag Team Champions. The story isn't even about Asuka being the Raw Women's Champion. It's about Alexa Bliss returning to the ring. Why? Because arguably Alexa Bliss right now is in the hottest angle, pun intended, that's on Monday Night Raw at the moment. And that being the whole angle with Randy Orton and The Fiend. Of course, at the end of last week's edition of Monday Night Raw, we had the whole Randy Orton Triple H situation going on, which, to be honest, if they don't address it, this was my problem. This is my problem with that whole Triple H Randy Orton situation at the end of last week's Raw is, okay, you have the Randy Orton Triple H issue. That was random. That came out of nowhere. That felt very odd and bizarre. But okay, it served a purpose. It got people, I suppose, to try and stay for that third hour. Still didn't do a great number, the third hour. It never does. I think it was something like 1.6 million live viewers in that final third hour. So hardly was the most amazing hook as to keep people in. Nevertheless, they do the angle at the start of the show. They shoot it for the end of the show. The show's ended with Triple H and Randy Orton. They have a match. In the grand scheme of things, it was a brawl that lasted a couple of minutes. In the end, Triple H is there. He gets out his sledgehammer. His sledgehammer sets on fire. Darkness then engulfs the arena. Alexa Bliss shows up and she shoots the fireball at Randy Orton. My point, my very long-winded point, being that the Randy Orton Triple H issues, that just disappeared now. We're just not going to talk about that again because now we've moved back on. Alexa Bliss is now still in the feud with Randy Orton. The whole angle is about the Fiend and Randy Orton. We're just not going to talk about the Triple H and Randy Orton issue. That was obviously an issue enough so that it had Triple H's first match since 2019 last week on Raw. I mean, that was my issue. That was my big issue with that is not only did the opening segment last week between Triple H and Randy Orton just feel really bizarre and feel really forced, and I don't know if that was because of the Drew McIntyre situation with testing positive for COVID. I don't know if that was because of the desperation for ratings. I don't know if that was because of the last minute rewrites. Certainly felt like a lot of those factors played into it, especially last week, but now we're supposed to just assume, okay, we don't talk about that anymore. We're just moving on. Remember, Alexa Bliss and Randy Orton, that's the angle, that's the feud right now. Triple H, he can just disappear once again like he did last week. That was my issue. Where do you go from the Randy Orton Triple H issue? Do you pick that back up? Or do you just forget about it? Do you just tell the audience, no, it doesn't matter anymore? It's issues like that that I think really turn off audiences. Because we're conditioned for 3 hours last week to know that Randy Orton Triple H is a real personal issue. All the history they have, evolution, all that kind of stuff. The matches they've had over the years, the feuds they've had over the years. We have this personal match. Triple H didn't want to fight Randy Orton, but Randy Orton goaded him into it, talking about Stephanie McMahon, all that kind of stuff. And they have the fight, the brawl at the end of the show, and now we're just supposed to forget about it. To me, that just seems odd. That just seems odd that you would just ignore it. You would just now ignore it. So I don't know if they're going to readdress that issue. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. I think Triple H appearing last week probably was a one-off. It was desperation. You know, we had the College Football Championship game last week. WWE was desperate for those ratings. That was the situation at that point, I guess. I don't know. It just felt very odd to me. It felt very odd to me last week, and it felt very forced, frankly, last week. That was the confusing element of that. So obviously, as I mentioned, we closed last week's show with the fireball in the face of Randy Orton. It has been announced, in addition to the Alexa Bliss versus Asuka match, it has been announced that tonight we will get a storyline update when it comes to Randy Orton. So we're going to get an update as to his injury. A lot of the time when they do these fireballs, they tend just to say that they suffered minor burns, minor injuries. Randy Orton will be fine. Of course, when it comes to Randy Orton, the next discussion has to be, considering this Alexa Bliss and Randy Orton back and forth on Raw over the last few weeks, whether it's Alexa telling Randy Orton to set her on fire to join The Fiend, or Alexa teasing that The Fiend is going to be returning, or he's returned to Earth, down to his home, all that kind of stuff. That says to me that The Fiend is obviously returning soon. We know that The Fiend is returning soon. It's just a case of when. Is The Fiend going to be returning tonight? There's a possibility The Fiend could be returning tonight, or is he going to be returning at the Royal Rumble? Obviously, Randy Orton has declared himself for the Royal Rumble match, but it has subsequently been reported that that might be a red herring. It might be a situation where WWE are trying to point us in one direction when they're actually going in another direction. I don't know if that's the case, because I don't even know if the Raw creative team knows the direction that Randy Orton and the storylines are going in right now. But there had been these reports and rumours that Randy Orton was going to be facing Bray Wyatt in a Firefly Funhouse match at the Royal Rumble. And I mentioned at the time, and I think this is worth pointing out, that should they hold off The Fiend's return to the Royal Rumble and have him just show up in the Royal Rumble match and eliminate Randy Orton, you do have to think about where does Edge factor into that, because of course we know that Edge is going to be facing Randy Orton. They're going to have the final match in the trilogy. It's going to be Edge versus Randy Orton 3. That's going to happen at WrestleMania, and if that happens after the Royal Rumble, you start reducing the amount of time there, and I'm not sure that WWE would want to do that. To me, it makes most sense to have The Fiend versus Randy Orton happen at the Royal Rumble, finish the feud there, and then you can move on to Edge versus Randy Orton. You can then start building up that program, or revisiting that program, as that were, to have the final match at WrestleMania, because it looks like that's going to be the case for WrestleMania. That's always been the plan for WrestleMania ever since Edge got injured way back when in June. So I think that possibly means that The Fiend is returning sooner rather than later, and possibly not at the Royal Rumble. It could possibly happen tonight. So there certainly is a situation where we could see The Fiend return tonight on Raw. Then they announce the Firefly Funhouse match for the Royal Rumble. After the Royal Rumble, they go their separate ways. Randy Orton feuds with Edge, and then I don't know when it comes to Bray Wyatt. What is he going to be doing going into WrestleMania? That certainly is another topic of discussion. So that is certainly interesting. That's what tonight's episode of Raw is pretty much based around now, as I mentioned. It's about Alexa Bliss's return to the ring. It's about Alexa Bliss feud with Randy Orton. It's about the update, the next chapter in the Randy Orton, Alexa Bliss, and the Fiend storyline, whatever that may be. I think it's interesting, though, as I mentioned before, when it comes to Asuka, is just what is Asuka doing right now? Nobody knows. Nobody really knows what Asuka is doing right now when it comes to her situation, because she hasn't defended the Raw Women's Championship since September or something like that against Zelina Vega at Clash of Champions. Zelina Vega isn't even with the company anymore. Since then, you had her face Sasha Banks at Survivor Series. She lost. Since then, of course, you had her team with Lana for a little bit, and then you had her now teaming with Charlotte Flair, winning the Women's Tag Team Championship. It just feels like WWE, for whatever reason, since Charlotte Flair's returned, but to be honest, going back as far back as September, WWE just going, you know what, we just don't care. We just don't care. That's what it does feel like. It does feel like Asuka, for whatever reason, has just been completely forgotten about, and I don't know why. I really don't know why. You think of the year that Asuka had. For periods of time, especially in those first few episodes of Monday Night Raw, in the pandemic, in those empty arena shows for WWE, it felt like she was carrying the show at times. She was the entertainment value when there was none. She was brought out on commentary a couple of times during some matches. Why? But just because she was entertaining. She had nothing to do with the matches. Remember when she was on commentary with Jerry Lawler, Tom Phillips, and Byron Saxton? Why was she there? Just for the pure entertainment factor. She really did hold up some of those Monday Night Raw. She was one of the MVPs in those empty arena shows. So much so that she became the Raw Women's Champion. She was picked as the person to carry the Raw Women's division after Becky Lynch left for maternity leave. And now it just feels like, for whatever reason, WWE, they're just not interested, or they've just forgotten about her. And I know people will point out, and they'll probably say, well, that's because Charlotte Flair's coming back, and that's because Charlotte Flair's now involved, and all they care about is Charlotte Flair, this, that. I understand that, and that probably is slightly fair in that criticism, but I think also it's slightly unfair in the sense that this has been going on since September, really. So it's not just because of Charlotte Flair's recent return to Monday Night Raw. I think other factors have played into that as well. I think other factors, such as, for whatever reason, WWE just being very cyclical in the way they think and the way they utilize talents. Obviously, hasn't been paid to the Raw Women's division in general, frankly, since June, since Charlotte Flair left because of her injury the first time. We've seen Asuka get involved with certain talents, whether it was Zelina Vega or Mickie James. I thought that was well done. Obviously, WWE was interested in utilising her when they had Bayley and Sasha Banks on Raw. I think that probably could have been done better then as well. But for whatever reason at the moment, and I can't put my finger on it, WWE just isn't interested. They just isn't interested, and it's a crying shame because the talent is there on Raw, whether it's Asuka, Lacey Evans, Peyton Royce, now Charlotte Flair. Yes, they are still missing a Becky Lynch and a Ronda Rousey, but they've got a ton of talent on Monday Night Raw, and for whatever reason, as I mentioned, they're more interested in the Charlotte Flair, Lacey Evans storyline involving Ric Flair, and it's come at a cost of Asuka. But as I mentioned, it's not all that, because this has been going on, frankly, since September, which was the last time she defended the Raw Women's Championship. And frankly, if WWE isn't interested in utilising Asuka and having her defend the Raw Women's Championship, put it on Alexa Bliss. At least she's being featured on TV every week in a major storyline. I mean, I know some people might roll their eyes at that because of how many times Alexa Bliss has held the championship, but to me, that makes the most sense. So, in terms of this match tonight, to be honest, I wouldn't be stunned in the slightest if we didn't even see a finish in this match. I really wouldn't, because I think the match is probably going to be a vehicle to continue the Alexa Bliss, Randy Orton, The Fiend rivalry. So in that case, I could see this being a situation where Randy Orton gets involved, it's a no contest, or maybe even The Fiend comes out. I don't even think there'll be an outcome for this one, I really don't. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Alexa Bliss facing Asuka tonight on Monday Night Raw? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved with the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.